for the second time. I was really excited for this to start earlier. One second. For all of you that love WebEx, this is really great when they only give you so much room to work. And 1 second. Okay. All right. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. My name is Kate Vandale. I'm the Public Information Officer with the City of Duluth. We are here today as a part of a weekly press conference that we will be doing every Wednesday at 12:30. This is going to be something that we roll out for the foreseeable future and until further notice. Just with the pandemic continuing, we thought that this would be helpful to give you, the viewers, an opportunity to not only ask questions, but for us to provide updates to you on what we're doing operations-wise and any announcements that we have. So hopefully you will find this helpful. Before we get started, on a call with us today, we have Mayor Larson, who will be giving the rundown of all of the announcements that we have, in addition to several different directors. We have our Public Works Director, Jim Benning. We have Fire Chief Mike, we have the Police Chief, Mike Teskin. We have our Fire Chief, Sean Crige. We also have our CFO, Wayne Parson, our CAO, Noah Schuckman. And then we have our Director of Planning and Economic Development, Chris Fleege. So thank you all for joining us. Again, I will be monitoring and just muting all of you during the call if you have access. We'll take questions at the end and also provide some questions that were sent in to us by residents before the press conference. So with that, I'd like to say welcome. And again, just wanted to introduce Mayor Larson. So thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Kate. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Kate, so much for doing the hard work of putting this kind of a press conference together. It's the second time we've done this remotely, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate everyone who participates in this way. Last week, my husband, Doug, was my in-room helper during the press conference. Today, it's my son, Gabe. So, Kate, please text Gabe if you have any needs or questions while we are going along, if there's anything we need to catch. So many things happening right now as it relates to COVID-19. First of all, I hope you are well. I hope you are healthy. I hope you are keeping tabs on people that are important in your life. The City of Duluth continues to provide you the basic services that you need: water, utilities, public safety, all sorts of different things. And we are also struggling, like many businesses, like many houses, with the financial realities of COVID-19. So earlier this week, I did present some budget updates to the Duluth City Council. It is a PowerPoint and a presentation you can find online at the DuluthMN.gov/council website and web pages. So you can hear the recording, you can see the PowerPoint. It's a very simple PowerPoint. I tried to do it so that you didn't have to listen to it to kind of get the gist of what it is that we are up against. We really identified every source of revenue that we anticipate to be impacted by COVID-19. That does not include, purchases we need to make to prepare for COVID-19. Many of those are getting reimbursed. What it is really sales tax, property tax, tourism tax, parking fund, utilities, all the things that go into funding our services as a city. And as I talked about during that presentation, we anticipate there to be about $20 to $38 million impact to the City of Duluth. At this point, we are not getting indications that there will be cash assistance for cities as a result of federal bills that are being passed, the CARES Act. There are 3 versions that have been passed. They have done really sure that workers are covered and businesses are covered. They have done a less thorough job of making sure that municipalities and states and counties are covered unless there are substantial population pockets, ones that we don't qualify for. And so at this point, we are moving forward, making decisions that are difficult and painful, making decisions we know impact you, your families, your neighborhoods, our community, whether it's your job that's involved or just the service that you really value. And these are the decisions that we need to make now to make sure that we can have a path out of this, out of COVID-19. As I also talked about, we are keeping really close tabs on what's happening with other municipalities, what's happening around the state, what's happening around the country. I and our Chief Administrative Officer, Noah Schuckman, are members and participating in calls and meetings with leaders around the state, around the region, around the country. So we are advocating hard for everything that we think we are eligible for. We are pushing our federal partners. They are pushing for us. Just yesterday, Senator Tina Smith, United States Senator Tina Smith, submitted a bill that would help cities receive a tax credit for some of the paid leave that has been built into the federal bill, but is on municipalities. So again, if you have an interest in some of the financial realities that we are facing, please take time to go into that PowerPoint to hear the presentation. It's about a half an hour presentation, then about a half an hour of questions with the Duluth City Council, who have been just terrific about supporting the work of this community, asking really good, hard questions, really drilling down. And so I appreciate their leadership so much and their partnership. With that in mind, I do actually, before I go any further, want to acknowledge the departure of Barb Rust from the Duluth City Council. She's somebody I've worked with for many, many years in a variety of capacities, and she submitted her resignation last week so she could focus on her health, and her contributions have been significant to this community. I have appreciated her honesty, her straightforward determination, the way she has led in this community. I will miss her in this role, but I'm so happy that she and can focus on her health and getting well through some important health times for all of us. So I did want to just start with the budget realities, let you know that you can find that information. It's because of these realities, every single decision we have made as a city is based on your health and financial realities. When we closed City Hall, we started closing public buildings on March 16th. We took that really seriously. That was about protecting your health, the health of our staff, and the health of this community. We continue to be closed throughout the governor's order. We continue to track very closely with the governor's office what's happening in regards to the order, how orders are changing, how stay-at-home is being modified. We will continue to do that. But we take your health very, very seriously. And making some really painful decisions, whether it's closing playgrounds or golf courses or laying off staff. It's a combination of health and financial reality that puts us in this position. And I want you to know that while these are difficult decisions to make, we will make the difficult decisions we need to be solvent and steady and strong as a city, so that you have what you need to build your life, your family, to rebuild your career, to go back out and rebuild that business. Duluth continues to be an amazing place to live and work and play and be in community. And we will continue to be that with your support, with your help, and the hard decisions that we are making. So while I don't like the position we are in, we are doing all that we can. You will see in the next week or so, and actually we have public comment open right now on some funding that has been made available to us through the CARES Act. During March of 2020, the Congress passed funding from HUD, the Housing and Urban Development, to help areas respond to COVID. What they did is provide the city of Duluth with $1.4 million in CDBG, Community Development Block Grant funding, and another $700,000 in ESG, which is shelter grant. And so what we can do now is go out and serve some underrepresented communities and some under-resourced communities in some really creative ways. We have worked hard as a staff. I want to thank our planning and economic development staff, who have been incredibly innovative. You're going to hear some ideas that we have already launched in terms of business support from the city of Duluth. But in some of the solutions that we have open for public comment now, you'll see how far we are digging down to make sure need us to show up in a big way, whether it's small business owners or disconnected communities, people who are homeless, or people just need a second chance. We're doing everything we can because we see you and we hear you. And we know that this pandemic is not just hitting those of us who have a job and those of us who have a regular kind of day-to-day existence. It's hitting hardest the people who are living on our margins. Truly, we need to be a community that steps into that margin and brings people with us as we continue to move forward. So So we are identifying some priorities and some needs. We want your comments. We want your thoughts. You can find more information about the HUD funds that we will be allocating. We hope to allocate them next month. You can find that duluthmn.gov/planning and development. So it's all on there. There's a lot of websites we'll be giving, and I know if you have follow-up questions, we can give you something more specific. But our website's great, and it's up to date, and you'll find everything that you need there. I want to provide 2 updates on business efforts that we have underway. We understand that while the federal government and the state government are implementing strategies that can help you and your business and your family sustain yourselves during this time, we see the role of local government as stepping in on a very real and tangible basis to help support you in ways that those other resources can't. For instance, last week we announced the 1200 Fund, put together a fast track grant program that would provide funding in the range of $10,000 and $20,000 to entities and businesses that have a financial need at this time. And we have already financially supported some businesses through the 1200 Fund, so we wanted to continue to support them with some flexible dollars that can be used in a variety of ways that other funding can't right now. But we also really needed to make this not just about people who know how to access inside track information, but really open it up to the community. We can help about 100 businesses. That's how we have projected that pot of money. However, we got over 360 applications. So I want to thank businesses that have articulated your need. It's my understanding that the need is tremendous. It is well articulated. It is well grounded, and that your heart and your spirit is in the business that you have built. So I recognize that. And if I could help every single one of these businesses, we would, but the 1200 Fund just does not have that kind of financial capacity. The board will meet this week to make decisions and to let people know how their applications sit. And so we can expect an announcement coming forward on that. The 1200 Fund is actually a nonprofit. It's not a city entity. And so some of the information is still not public as it relates to who's applied and how that will go. But we will all be notified in due time how that works. And so I really want to thank the staff who packaged that within 3 days. We announced it on Monday. The application process closed on Thursday. We worked our tails off to make sure everybody knew about it. In that time, we had over 360 applications. So just really, really want to thank our team for that. I want to talk briefly about DITA, which also entered into an investment strategy to support businesses by pairing $443,000 and investing that into the Entrepreneur Fund to do Duluth Small Business Emergency Fund. So we are doing everything we can to work with resources that are already there, but to do it in new ways. In addition, they're considering, and maybe already moved on this actually, $125,000 additional investment with the Entrepreneur Fund that would unlock an additional $1 million. So we are working hard to try to harness everything we can, be very smart about the resources that are out there, be cognizant of what we can do to target you in a positive way, to get the resources that you need and just bring it all together. So both of those actions actually have already passed council even, so we're already moving forward on that. Kate, I think I'm done with we are going to hear from DPD and I think DFD, correct?
Yes, Emily. However, I thought that you were going to read that, but we can certainly have Chief
Yeah, I'll do it.
Oh, okay, yeah, perfect.
Got it.
Thank you.
Okay. Just feels like a lot of me, and I'm very cognizant of that, and I think my family would agree it could be a lot of me. Anyway, for our Duluth Police Department, I want to thank, there was a wonderful profile in the newspaper today about one of our officers, just another standard, terrific City of Duluth employee working and doing her best to serve you as a community. I want you to know that we are here. We are showing up for you. If you call 911, we will be there. We want you to call us in an emergency. Our Duluth Police Department has changed our staffing model during this time. people who have technically or for a significant amount of time maybe been ill are now on patrol. So we have everybody in the patrol pool. What that means is that we have more eyes and ears on the street at this time when you need us, when we have businesses that are closed, when we have people who are moving around in our neighborhoods to get fresh air and just move around. We have more police presence, just ensuring your safety. And I've seen them at work, and it's terrific to see. Overall, we are seeing that calls for service are down, calls are steady, and we are responding in this different way. We are encouraging when you have a need to be very clear on your 911 call about what it is you're experiencing, and to let us know if you have any health concerns for somebody who is in the building. As we've talked about before, I think Chief Kruget talked about how Duluth Fire was responding differently to calls. So are Duluth Police. We're doing our best to keep everybody safe, including you. And so we may pause a little bit at the door and what's going on before we go inside. As I said, investigative staff have been reassigned to patrol. However, violent crimes and crimes against people and crimes against children remain a very top priority for us. So it's not that we have removed investigative strategies altogether. It's just that we are doing our best to expand the presence of police in the community in a very visible way. And we are missing, I know that our police department is really missing the ways that they used to engage in community. We're doing new things like drive-by birthday parties, drive-throughs of Harbor, Highlands, and other neighborhoods, just to make sure that you see us still here. I want to especially reassure you, we are seeing, of course, many people are home. And for some of us, being home is maybe it's not the ideal place to work, but it's working. However, for some people, being home is really unsafe, and it's not a good place to be. If you are experiencing domestic violence, we want you to call 911. If you are experiencing substance abuse or you need support or recovery, those resources are still available. They are ready to help. If you want to go to our Facebook page, we have been posting information on mental health supports on wonderful websites that can help support any anxiety and depression that relates to this virus and gives you supports for your recovery as you continue during this very strenuous time. We are seeing, of course, people, I can feel it. You can feel it, whether it's on social media or just in our conversations with people. People are worried and anxious, and it sometimes comes out sideways. So we want to take good care of our neighbors. And I know that our DPT is really looking forward to getting back into community with everyone after this virus resolves. It may take us a while. And the new norm will be different than the norm we had before. I know our CAO will talk about that a little bit. Also this week, our fire department welcomed a new tower truck. It is something that we had purchased long before the virus, and of course takes a while. These are specialized trucks. It takes quite a while to put them together, and we want to thank the team that did that. It's a 100-foot aerial tower. It is going to be it's arrived and it's at fire headquarters. The previous tower one was 22 years old, and it had a compartment fire on July 2nd of 2018. So we really need to make sure that our first responders are safe, and we want them driving and utilizing safe equipment, which is why we went ahead. Previously, we had been using a 26-year-old ladder truck that was in and out of service due to maintenance issues. We're going to begin training on this truck after it receives its final piece of equipment from our fleet department. So look for this new and awesome, beautiful truck to be on the roads in mid-May, taking good care of you, taking safe care of our workers. And while the police department has seen a general decrease in calls, I didn't say that at the beginning, but police department is seeing a general decrease in calls. However, an increase physical presence in our community. The fire department has seen an increase in our calls because they often are the ones responding to all the medical calls. Calls are up approximately 120 calls compared to this time last year, and the number includes 30 more fire-related calls. So surprisingly, you would think the number of medical calls are up, but they are actually down by over 200. And our fire and police departments continue to take precaution when entering any situation during this time in an effort to keep our staff and residents safe. So we want to keep our workers safe and healthy. We want to keep you safe and healthy too. Thanks for helping us do that in a variety of ways. I happen to know that our police and fire chief are going to jump in the lake tomorrow, actually. So extra thanks to Chief Tuscan and Chief Kruget. It was part of a fundraiser that some wonderful kids, Bria, Dawson, and Bryce, challenged the community to fundraise to raise money to buy food for first responders and frontline workers during this time. So they exceeded their $5,000 goal. And so we get to see our chiefs jump in the lake tomorrow. It's going to be at 2:30. It'll be on the Duluth Fire Department or the police department Facebook page at that time. So if you're looking for some fun and want to enjoy that and celebrate the hard work of these kids in this community, I invite you to do that. Just a couple more updates, and then you will hear from CAO Shuckman. I got asked yesterday about the 2020 census. As we've talked about, the census is a critical tool that ensures that funding happens for every single neighborhood, every single community. It is how we count who is here and who they are and how we can get people's information to them. Oh, thank you, Kate. So we have some response information. 63.7% of Duluthians have already filled out the census. This is incredible. And we are on par with the Minnesota self-response, which is 64.3%. In Duluth, every single person counts. And even amid social distancing, we remain committed to ensuring all of our communities are fully counted in the 2020 census. This includes neighborhoods like the Hillside and Lincoln Park that are falling below that city average. It is incredibly important that every resident in our neighborhood participate in the census because this is how we know to target resources to your neighborhood. So we will doubling down our efforts to encourage people to fill out the census. I did ours for our family on April 1st, which was National Census Day. It took less than 10 minutes online. There's plenty of information you can find on our webpage, on our Facebook page, and online. 2020, my2020census.gov is the best general page to find out information about the census. And finally, a few words about the month and about discrimination. The month of May is Asian and Pacific American Heritage Month. May kicks off later this week. I'm calling special attention to it because we are experiencing and people are anecdotally sharing with us experiences of discrimination in this community and around the state. And as we know, this virus doesn't discriminate and we won't discriminate either. So I want to give special mention to the 40+ ethnic groups that fall within the designation of Asian and Pacific American heritage. And to celebrate you can celebrate and participate in events all month long. There will be a special virtual celebration this Friday, May 1st at 6 p.m. It's going to be broadcast live on Facebook on the Coalition of Asian American Leaders page of Minnesota. And so I encourage you, this is a great time if you are home to learn more about other people, to take a time to celebrate the heritage of people around you, people in this community, people who may need us to show up for them in a bigger way. So just something to consider. There is a website, caalmn.org. This Minute Asian Stories didn't come out so smoothly, but we will get more information out to you. And I just want to thank, in particular, people in our community who are of Asian and Pacific heritage. Thank you for who you are. And then lastly, we are seeing discrimination rates increase across the state, and we want to take special care of our neighbors. Thank you to our Human Rights Officer. Thank you to our Community Relations Officer. Both Carl Crawford and Alicia Kozlowski are on the front line with us, collecting those stories and making sure people are getting the justice or getting their fairness and equity and justice served. So there is a state discrimination hotline. If you are experiencing discrimination, please call 1-833-454-0148. This past weekend, we had a virtual cleanup, and I want to thank both my family that went out with me in my neighborhood, but we had over 600 people sign up and check in virtually. And that's just people who chose to do that. We know many, many more were out there, but those 600 people logged 902 hours of cleanup in this community, and it is amazing. So I want to thank you. I noticed a big difference in my own neighborhood. I want to particularly thank Lowell Design, Whole Foods Co-op, and Twin Ports Trailer Trash for their donations that people were eligible for. We had a really big citywide cleanup planned, and it was going to be just a big event, and we've been planning it actually for about 6 months, but social distancing called us to be different, and thank you to our planning team for stepping into action and doing that so well. There was a statewide mask drive last weekend that the governor was supporting. Over 2,500 homemade masks were delivered to our fire departments. And I want to thank residents who are choosing to invest their time in taking care of their community by picking up, taking care of their neighbors by making masks. It makes a difference. And as we move into the next phases of this virus, we will find that personal responsibility, taking accountability for our own health, is also about protecting other people. So having those masks are really important. I want to thank the fire department for distributing those masks to over 30 different facilities that needed them. And I want to give special thanks to the Duluth NAACP. The branch is now on their 4th distribution of masks. They have been in every neighborhood. Well, they've been in 3 neighborhoods in Duluth, and they are in their 4th neighborhood today. They've been over in Superior. They're going to have another distribution next week. They have given out hundreds and hundreds of masks at no cost, homemade, that have been donated. Today they are at Plaza Super One at 5 p.m. So I want to let you know about that, and thank you, Duluth NAACP. That's really a lot for me. So we're going to hand it over to CAO Noah Schuckman, who's going to talk a little bit about city facilities. Noah?
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. We are starting to look at a phased approach for when we might be able to reopen city buildings. One of the questions that we do get as the governor starts to talk about phased reopenings of portions of the state economy, our first priority is the safety of our employees and our residents, and we're determining the best way to return to work when it is time. Those decisions have been based around the governor's executive orders, and so every time a new order comes out, we continue to evaluate how that will affect the city of Duluth as an organization, our buildings and our staff, and how we will respond to those orders. For now, city buildings do remain closed and will remain closed until further notice. We do want to thank the public for its patience and city staff for theirs. Our staff is still here to provide services for you, and for now is doing that remotely. One thing I just want to note is that when we do return city buildings and city staff to work, what we once thought was normal will not be. And so we are looking at what that new normal looks like, both when it comes to city operations and also as a community, something that we all will need to start to adjust to, that new normal and a new definition of it. And so we thank you for your patience as we work through those issues and work to make sure that we can do city business in a way that is safe and thoughtful for our staff and for the community. Kate, at this point, I think I'm turning it back to you.
Thanks, Noah. I am just trying to get myself back on here. Here we go. So again, that takes us to the end of our press conference for the day. And before we open it up for questions from the media, I do just want to acknowledge that we don't have an ASL interpreter as a part of this press conference. That's something that we've done in the past, and we certainly want to continue to do that. We, like everybody else, are trying to figure out with this new technology pieces that we're trying to use to reach residents and other people alike. And so my hope is that we will have an ASL interpreter at the next week's press conference, but just again wanted to acknowledge that. I also wanted to say thank you. We had put out in our media advisory yesterday for the public to submit questions. We got a lot of them, so thank you. We are in the process of going through and we'll answer those as quickly as we can. So I will also be asking Mayor Larson some of those questions that we did get before the call after questions from the media. So at this point, I would like to open it up for questions from the media at this point. So again, if you could signify by raising your hand or by letting me know in the chat mode if you have a question, we will find the correct person to answer that. Any questions? Okay, this doesn't ever happen. So maybe we'll start, Mayor Larson, with a question from a resident. One of the first questions that we had gotten, and we got a lot of questions on golf, was if the mayor can guarantee that Lester Park Golf Course will open next year as a full 18-hole course and driving range as a good faith gesture. And so again, just wanted to hand that over to Mayor Larson to answer.
So whether I would open it up as a good faith gesture?
Yes.
The entire goal. Okay, well, fair question. My answer is no, I will not make a commitment to that. I understand that golf is important to whomever has submitted that question, and I value that and appreciate that. At this point, we are not making any kinds of pre-commitments because we're struggling to fulfill the commitments we already have in place. As the person who asked the question and residents and media will discover in the weeks ahead, we have already made decisions about closing a variety of different facilities. We are laying off staff. And as we move forward, you will hear more about the tourism entities that will be impacted by our inability to collect the tourism taxes to provide the funding to them. So I cannot make that guarantee. I appreciate that that was your direct ask, and it's in good faith that I give this, really honest answer to you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Larson. At this point, I'm going to open it up from a question from Nishay Taylor at Fox. Nishay, I just unmuted you, so go ahead and ask your question.
I was just wondering about, you mentioned that there was more than 360 applications. What kind of words can you have for those who may not be able to get the funding that you're offering since you're only able to help about 100?
Yep.
Director Chris Fleege from the Planning and Economic Development Department is on the call. Chris, would you be willing to take that question?
Sure. I think it's not unlike really the federal government and the state funds that ran out. I think the need is just so overwhelming. I think Mayor Larson framed it really well, saying it breaks our heart as we're reading these applications and knowing in genuine, that these businesses really are hurting. So I think we're doing the best we can to help evaluate them, and ultimately the board will make those selections. And I can tell you, for the board members, it's a really difficult and gut-wrenching process as they're trying to select them, because they only know about a third or a fourth are going to receive funding. So, again, we encourage other entities, other foundations to step up. It's not just the city, it's going to be a village to help, bring these businesses back. So if there are other entities out there that can help with the funding, I think it's going to take the village. So don't have great words for them other than we're doing the best we can to sift through those, and the board will make some tough decisions, but again, the need just outstrips really what the resources are, and there's no question that we know that. So, we will definitely be notifying all applicants, whether they're successful or not, and we'll do it in a timely manner. I think the goal is to have it really, pretty well in hand by the end of next week, so people will definitively know if they've got the assistance coming. So that should help them make plans as well.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Next up, Peter from the DNT had a question. Peter, go ahead.
Mayor Larson, you painted a pretty dire picture of the budget when you gave your presentation to the council earlier this week. And you've made some pretty significant cuts, I think about to the tune of about 120 positions from the city that are no longer being staffed. Do you foresee additional cuts likely being necessary, or does that become a situation where you begin to jeopardize critical services if you go deeper?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Peter. I did paint a really honest portrait of our financial situation, and it does feel dire. So the fact that that came across, I'm okay with, because it was really just trying to get the facts to the council, because they need to know what it is that we are facing and the decisions that are going to be ahead. At some point, we will need to bring forward a revised budget. I think some of it depends. We have laid off 100 workers. We have kept, through a hiring freeze and other strategies, just not filled 20 positions. So we are down 120 positions in the city. And I would actually argue that every single one of them are critical, and every single one of them have been providing a service that somebody in this community really, really considers essential. So the hard part about every single resident may pick a different activity or a different city service to be essential to them. And in the end, I have to make the best decisions I can within the contracts and within the scope of work that we are able to do. I think, to get to your question, some of it is going to be what does a new reset look like as we come out of this? What are we doing differently in providing services? For instance, our wonderful libraries, and that was a big heart ache for a lot of people, including me, earlier this week. We are now functioning very differently as a library. So we are no longer utilizing a strategy that was an in-person, not solely in person, but primarily in person strategy is now a virtual or distance strategy, in the same way that teachers in school districts and private schools and charter schools across the state, across the country, are trying to figure out how to deliver their services differently. So some of it, I think, is going to have to really be a clear assessment on how do we do this now? How do we provide the services that people need? Some of it, and a lot of it, is going to be about how do we do that with health in mind, but then what can we really afford? And as it relates to that, as we transition out of this phase of COVID-19, we're really heavily dependent on revenues that come in through property tax, which we receive twice a year. Our first payment of property tax should come in May. We're expecting a significant decrease in that property tax collection, and we won't be able to make that up for at least 6 months, maybe 12 months from now. And then sales tax, which of course has been incredibly depressed, because people are spending less and places are closed. And that, I think, will reopen slowly, but we have delayed payments. So we are very behind on where we would normally be in that collection, because we have delayed payments without penalty to align with the state of Minnesota. So in short, I will honestly say I'm not sure what comes next as it relates to assessing our staff levels. But in long, as I've described, I don't see a path out by which we don't have to continue to look at that. Clearly a majority of our spending is staff. And so we're working really closely with all of our bargaining units, because it's important to us that we're doing that well, that we're doing that thoughtfully, with compassion, with care, and thinking through how that impacts, current workload and residents and contracts. So we're all in that discussion together.
Great. Thanks, Mayor Larson. I don't see another question from a member of the media, so I'll go back to a resident question.
Okay.
Regarding the unfortunate recent resignation of Councilor Barb Russ, when would an interim councilor be announced, and how can citizens submit their names for consideration?
Thank you for that question. Yes, there is the resignation of Councilor Russ. I mentioned that at the beginning. She resigned effective immediately last week, so she could focus on other things, including getting well and having good health. And so, as was done a couple of years ago, Councilor Elissa Hansen resigned, and there was an appointment made to fill her seat. At that time, it was Eric Forsman. Like that, a few years ago, the process will be similar in the sense that it's a council-driven process. I feel actually really strongly about this, that it is designed to be a council-led process. And so I support it, and I do what I can to support the council to make that decision, to make sure they have the information and the structure to make their decision. But I do not influence it, and I do not work to control that at all. It's my understanding that President Anderson and Vice President Van Nett and Personnel Chair Councillor Kennedy, do have a plan that they are talking through, and that they will release that and talk about it publicly at the May 11th meeting. So I would expect that there will be a very public application process, as there has been in the past, that there will be interviews with the councilors, and that the council will make a final determination. In terms of my involvement, it will be to support and watch and answer questions and meet with people who are applying should they reach out to me and want to do that. But again, it is council-led, and I expect that at the May 11th meeting, they will be public about what that process is and what you can expect, and if you're interested in applying, how you can do that.
Great, thank you. Again, not seeing a question from a member of the media, we'll answer another question from a resident. This one is, how does the park levy voted on by the tax-paying citizens of Duluth work in this situation of layoffs?
The Parks referendum that was passed in 2012 by residents, correct, Kate?
Yes.
Is a $2.6 million investment that residents decided they wanted to make into parks. It's fully dedicated. It's part of the property tax, actually, and it comes in as part of the property tax. So we are expecting a decrease in that collection that parallels the decrease we're expecting in property tax. We're expecting 10 to 25% decrease, 5 to 20% decrease in property tax, 5 to 20% decrease in that parks fund as well. Parks funding, that parks referendum does not fund all parks activities. Parks maintenance is funded through the general fund, and there are a variety of other positions and activities that kind of are crossover and funded differently. So in this case, the parks fund continues to be there. We are expecting a decrease anyway because of COVID, but it also has not increased in financial value. It has not increased with inflation since it started in 2012. So it's been a flat amount, while the cost to provide, the cost of materials, the cost of servicing, the cost of everything, as we know, keeps going up. That fund has not. So it's neither helpful nor hurtful as it comes to staff layoffs, to tell you the truth. But it is a fund that's really important to parks. And it's one that, again, will be impacted. Hope that kind of answered the question. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no, thank you. Again, seeing no other question from the media, we'll take one final question from a resident. Okay. This question is, when will Skyline Drive and Enger Park be reopened to cars?
Okay. Well, I hope whoever wrote that is enjoying that. We have closed down, I think, 5 sections now in the city for people to be able to social distance and get outside. It is perfectly safe to get outside. You need to do it safely, especially if you're going to go out and be around people. And it's one of the reasons why we wanted to create elbow room. We were getting a lot of calls from people who were concerned about the lake walk being too crowded and not feeling safe. This is actually an area where Duluth is leading the nation. And Jim Philby-Williams, our director of parks and facility, was on a national call to talk about what we're doing. So I'm proud of that. At any rate, the question was about 2 of those particular sections. It was Enger and Lester, I think.
It was Enger and Skyline.
Enger and Skyline. Oh yeah, Enger and Skyline. So at this point, we are monitoring all the time, monitoring every week. And with the Enger Golf Course opening, we wondered what that would cause for congestion and other things. At this point, we intend to keep both of those closures, and actually all of the closures, through May. We will assess as we go along. We will take a look if we can continue them, not continue them. Do we need to? Do we want to amend them? We're getting a lot of feedback that people are really enjoying it. And so we are not making any kind of commitment that it's going to continue indefinitely, but we are really happy that people are able to get out and enjoy that. So yeah, I know you can find that information on our website, but it is really neat to be able to see so many people out. And we are doing counts at certain locations. We know that about 500 people a day are using Enger, for instance. So that's really exciting to see.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Larson.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not seeing any additional questions from any members of the media. We thank you all for joining us today. We'll be back next Wednesday, as I mentioned at the top of this call, for another weekly set of announcements from Mayor Larson and other directors. And again, thank you all for participating in the call today. We appreciate it and hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.